thank you for tuning in to the Toledo Track and Trail Podcast, where co-hosts Matt Bucher and Marty Wheeler interview motocross and off-road racing and riding icons to capture their stories and experiences for you. So buckle up those helmets, grab a handful of throttle, and get ready to listen to the Toledo Track and Trail Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Ryder Powersports, located in Waterville, Ohio.
Ryder Powersports provides a host of services for your motocross and off-road machine. Ryder Powersports is the home to the ever-famous turbo speed tuning, and now Fathom Ride Company.
Give Ryder Powersports a call at 419-601-0421 and keep an eye out for their spring grand openings. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. This is Season 2, Episode 8 of the Toledo Track and Trail Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Bucher, joined by my co-host Marty Wheeler and our favorite audio-visual man, Mr. AJ Underwood. If you're watching us on YouTube, please do not forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. Today we want to welcome a local favorite among riders, a man's man, a brutally handsome fella, an industry insider, a suspension setup extraordinaire, a local expert of all things dirt bikes. Welcome, Tyler, to the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
You like that intro?
Yes.
That was perfect.
I was
good.
trying to think of who you were talking about.
And thank you, Tyler, for bringing this fellow over here with you, Mr. Mitch Gerwin. In all seriousness, we want to thank you guys for joining us on the podcast tonight. And so Tyler, you are Mitch's suspension and engine man, correct?
Yeah.
Of the shop.
Yep. I'm the grease monkey, basically. I'm the one in the shop turning the wrenches and
Doing the work.
Well, he does some stuff. He's on the phone.
I saw he got pizza the other day. So that's pretty.
Yeah. That was a very productive day. He got
I
pizza.
actually sent somebody out to do that. That was not me.
Delegation.
That
That's what they
was
said. Keyword is
Mr. Snowball went and got that.
Oh, good deal.
Yeah, it was not me.
Good deal.
Well, let's kind of jump, kind of in the beginning, and we'll take one of you at a time, just to kind of give the audience a sense of your history in dirt bikes and off-road and motocross and all that kind of stuff. So Mitch, let's start with you, and I know you've got certainly a huge following with the suspension stuff that you're doing. So where did you grow up riding? Are you from the area, moved in the area? What's Mitch's history here? So.
All right, Matt. So my family, the Gerwin family's been around this area for a long time. We were actually farmers. My dad was a farmer. My grandpa was a farmer. And they trail rode. My family has a deep history in trail riding. And me personally, I was a late bloomer. I would say all my cousins probably started around 4 or 5 years old.
Okay.
And my father thought I needed to get into it a little bit heavier than I was. Make myself a little bit more of a man, as you say, I guess.
A man's man.
A man's man. Regardless, I was not into it. I didn't have any balance on a bicycle. Probably could barely put one foot in front of the other. Barely walk, right? As you say it. But anyway, I got into it probably around 9 years old. My dad made me buy a bike. It was a 1972 Honda SL100.
Good bike.
It was a good bike. Headlight, taillight, rubber foot pegs. If the battery went dead, it would not start. Still had a kickstart, though. Explain that to me. Points and condensers or something like that. But anyway, it was a late blooming for me. I got into it around 10, and I didn't like it.
Didn't like riding.
Didn't like riding. It was not for me.
So did you only try trails, or were you trying to do some motocross stuff too?
I just tried to keep it up. I didn't want to fall over.
So you're riding at the family farm, right?
Yeah.
I'm assuming that you're riding out back in the farm fields and maybe the woods and that kind of stuff, trail riding.
Yep. We had 3 acres out in Bowling Green, and my dad went out back and he basically took a lawnmower and made a path.
Okay.
And I tried to keep up.
Was your dad a racer?
None of my family, they may have raced enduros, but they were never serious.
Okay.
Trials and enduros.
Okay.
We never really got into serious racing. It was a pretty light racing community in my family, but we loved riding. Everybody would get together for family
Everybody
time.
but you.
Everybody but me, my mom, my sister. Yeah.
Really?
I'm telling you, my girl cousins, boy cousins, they all rode. It was me and my sister and my mom. We were the only ones that didn't ride.
So what happened? What was the catalyst that it was did you have to fall in love love with it? Or, I mean, how do you go from hating it to loving it?
So I was about 10 years old, and like I said, I tried it. My dad and I went out back. We tried to figure it out, and it wasn't going to happen. It took friends, mutual friends, riding at my age to really get into it. So I think I turned 12 or 13 and had a couple new kids come down to my grade school that I went to school at, and new kids that came down from Michigan, I believe, and one that came from like Patrick Henry area. And they were into it. They liked riding dirt bikes. And I got invited out to their farm. And I went out there weekend after weekend and just kept riding.
So it was an association thing.
It was, yeah. It was just a group of friends that liked having fun. And we kept riding until I figured it out. Honestly, we figured it out together. All three of us, we didn't know how.
Right.
It was a true group of learners. And we all went out and we rode every weekend until we were halfway decent. So
you're at one point, did you start racing? How old were you then?
I think my first gate drop was 13 at Delta.
Okay.
I was 13 years old. So at least 3 years went by before I actually tried to race the dirt bike.
Okay.
At that point I had moved up. I had traded the SL100 for a 97 CR125. So I moved up to an aluminum or steel frame two-stroke.
Okay.
And yeah, and after that, it was kind of figure it out. It was a 4-year-old, 5-year-old race bike at the time. I had to go through it and get the motor fixed, and suspension was completely out of oil. Had a good friend of mine fix that up, went ahead and put oil in it and new seals, and started feeling pretty good. But after that, I think I spent 5 years in the beginner class, at least till 2003.
Okay.
He just moved up to.
I just moved up last year.
Last year.
I did actually. Yeah.
So from the beginner to the intermediate.
Yeah. Novice champion.
Novice champion. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he is getting better.
There's nothing wrong with that, man.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, everybody has a level, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's got a boundary of where they can go with anything,
Yeah.
I'm going to guess you're probably about what, 35, 36?
A little younger.
A little younger?
Couple years.
Couple years?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm feeling old.
I was
now.
trying to gauge that.
33.
33. Okay.
I'll be 34 this year. Yeah.
Okay. Well, at least you're not a woman, because I probably would have been slapped by now, right?
Oh, yeah, probably.
Isn't that the worst, trying to guess a woman's age?
I've never guessed.
We never do.
I've never tried.
When I was little,
never tried.
I'll never forget this. Side story. My cousin says, and I'm probably 8 or 9 years old. My cousin says, "Hey, go ask my mom how old she is, and how much does she weigh, and if she's pregnant." I'm like, "Oh, okay." I didn't know any better,
Those are all the questions you don't ask a woman.
Ones.
Yeah,
top three worst questions.
You just
of all
don't
time.
do that.
Yeah.
Whether you're 3 or 30.
Yes, don't do it.
Yeah.
So if anybody's listening that needs some advice, don't ask a woman those questions. So you're racing motocross. Do you venture out of Delta? Do you go to Milan, Tiffin? Where are you racing at?
So, like I said, Delta's my first racetrack. First race I had. This is a pretty cool story, actually.
Please share.
It's on film. My mom filmed this. So,
Is it on YouTube?
not yet. We can put
Should
it
be.
on there.
Put it on
We
YouTube.
can-
We'll link it.
We can put it on there. So, everybody's familiar with the old start at Delta.
Yep.
Back then, it would take a quick right and a quick left, go over the tabletop on the edge of the property and down. Never done a gate drop in my life, ever. So I'm on the gate, I'm all pumped up, got this CR125 singing, and man, first race in my life, and I'm like a wheel or two ahead of these people. I forgot to turn. I went straight right into the black hole, and I took out about 7 people with me. Yeah. And I'm sure that someone might be listening to this and may have
Was
been
one of
involved.
those
They
people.
may have been involved with that wreck, but I took out at least 7 bikes, and no fire. Nobody caught fire that night. But
Is that a story that we should hear, like catching fire? Or what is that about?
that's for another time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That's second. part two.
Oh, part two.
Yeah.
That's part two. We got to get a little more.
That's the
comfortable.
bonus footage. Is that what that is?
Put some disclaimers out
So
there.
you bowling alleyed your way to the start.
I not on purpose. I pushed my way what I thought was to the front, and by the time I realized people were turning, it was too late.
Right.
I took out half the pack.
Did anybody come up to you and go, "What in the Sam hell were you thinking?"
There were people in that race that are customers of mine this day.
Wow. Can you believe that?
And they talk about it. They're like, what happened?
That's some funny marketing.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you're trying to gain customers, just mow them over.
It was all due to suspension.
Yeah.
If you would have had good suspension back there, you would have no
I'm
problem.
just trying to get a glimpse of how your forks are, but by the way, I'm gonna take you out.
How did they rebound after I hit you?
Yep.
It's you know what, those things happen.
Yeah.
I'm at a GNCC 1997. I hit the scoring barrel. Okay. I come in, I pull up too close to they got a barrel and you write your score down to your lap or whatever. I pull up too close. I go to put my left foot down. My foot hits the barrel. I knock the barrel over with the woman doing the scoring, and right in front of the pro pits. Talk about. I mean, I just wanted to quit and go back and cry in the box fan.
You never forget that one.
And she gets up. Of course, she's not real happy. I was on a Yamaha, and Fred Andrews had the, whatever team it was. I forget the name of the dealership over there now. But anyway, it was a Fred Andrews Yamaha team, and she says, "Fred, is this one of your guys?" And he goes, "Nope, not one of mine." She is terrible. Anyway, we all have a
We
little,
all have a little
Dad's
story.
heading the other direction.
Yes. Yeah, my dad's like, "Oh my God." Ooh.
So what year was this that you started with a different bike? When you started getting really serious?
I wasn't serious yet. I thought I
Okay.
was in my head.
Well,
Yeah.
you seriously took out some people, so that's pretty serious.
I've taken out a few people in my day.
Yes.
Never on purpose.
Okay.
It's always an accident.
That's what he told me.
So anyway, I would say that was 2003, maybe 2003, I think.
Okay. Now you're out of school.
Nope, I was maybe a freshman in high school, something like that.
Okay.
So yeah, that was my first year on the 125. We packed up, put our tail between our legs, and went home and regrouped. My dad told me, he goes, "I'm not taking you back to the racetrack till you learn how to turn." And he wasn't kidding. I went out back in the backyard and I
Tracked
practiced
it?
turns. Yeah. Yep. Hairpins for the most part.
Yep.
Mostly hair turn. Yeah.
That's the part of the racing, right?
Yeah.
Everybody can go fast straight. I can even go fast
Jumps
straight.
for show, turns for dough.
Yep.
Yep.
I can go fast straight.
Yeah.
Just stopping and turning and
Yeah, it's all the other stuff.
standing up is my problem.
It's all the, navigating the turn.
That's correct.
Absolutely.
So you went back, still in high school. You start doing competitive while you're in high school, or did it take a while?
I mean, am I competitive right now? That's the real question.
We know that.
Did I ever?
That's part two.
Did I
again.
ever get competitive?
So I mean, was you doing more races while you're still in high school?
Yeah. So I would say the turning point, and we'll kind of jump back to this probably later in the podcast, but I bought this 125. It was, like I said, it was a 97 CR 125. I bought it in 01. I think I had it a year or two. So I probably started racing in 02. And it was worn out. I went through a couple top ends. It had a pro circuit cylinder that wasn't matched right to the power valves. I learned a lot on that bike. I learned a lot about motor building, which was cool. But really the turning point of that bike, I kept building this motor and I never realized how bad the suspension was. And a good friend of mine, John Magada, he lived in Bowling Green. He basically told me, he goes, "Hey, your issue's the shock and fork." I said, "Okay."
He was a racer, Mitch.
Long time, yeah. His roots were deep in Bowling Green. I think District 12 or District 11.
Okay.
Went to Loretta's a lot. Yeah, the guy, he was a very good racer in his
Okay.
time.
So he knew what he was talking about.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the guy was, well versed in motocross in Ohio.
Okay.
So we, we basically, he told me what I needed. I think he charged me $150 to rebuild this suspension from the ground up, and I took it out there. The next race, and I hit the first jump, and I remember the feeling. I was ready to bottom out because the bike would just completely collapse as soon as you hit the ground, and
Right.
it was just smooth as butter.
Yeah.
I said, hey, man, you should start a suspension shop. He said, oh, I travel too much. I can't do that. So anyway, that was the turning point for me. That was when I started to really ride the motorcycle. I couldn't ride the bike until the suspension was right. And as soon as he set it up right, I could feel the ground. I knew how to put the bike into a turn and work it out of it. So, and then obviously it jumped better too.
Well, that begs us to ask a question.
Sure.
Today, how many people buy a motorcycle and never do anything with the suspension? What would you say?
Oh,
75%
probably. Yeah.
or more?
Yeah. At least,
I mean,
60, I would say.
Because you see bikes going out to shop doors all the time, and you never really see anybody set anything up.
Yeah.
You don't see them tinkering with the suspension. Even in the, you see them out there, you never see anybody doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
You walk by and fork seals are leaking, and you just don't see that. And I know we've talked about this coming over to our track, and just spending a day talking suspension with people, what to do. I mean, it's, and I'm not quite sure how anybody can tell a suspension guy what the bike is doing if you don't know what a suspension is supposed to do.
Right.
So if you're riding whatever, and in what most bikes coming, you can get on them and ride them. They're not going to kill you, most likely.
Yeah.
But you can get out there and ride them for what, I can't outride a stock suspension, So, you go out there and you ride and you say, that's a great bike. And, I don't fall off and it's a good thing. So, but that's a key point that people don't realize. It's like any kind of equipment you have, the better equipment you have, the better you are. You never get good at trying to make it go through something it shouldn't go through and working twice or three
And
times.
I wouldn't
as high.
say better. The better the machine is tailored to what you need, to your needs, your preferences, the better you're going to handle the bike. And I don't care if it's a dirt bike, a car, a tractor. If you have it set up for what you need, it's going to work better. And that's truly, what we do. So
And I got to tell a story.
Go ahead.
So, I'm not a motocross guy. Whoops. I shouldn't say that.
We'll edit.
We're motocross,
Can we edit that
Express.
out?
We do motocross.
I think we can edit that out.
Can we edit
Yeah,
that
yeah.
out?
We can go back.
So off-road. I've been off-road for most of my 50 years, right? 55 years. So, that's where my heart is. So we ride the woods. I'm from Pennsylvania. We ride in the mountains. We, been able to go to Arizona, spent many years in Arizona riding. And so we start getting into bikes and that takes us back. I'm not quite sure when we were trying to figure that out the other day. Somebody was asking about that. I probably met you before going to the dealer in Toledo. And didn't we? I thought we met before that.
nope.
I thought we met somewhere, but anyway, long time. So what year was that?
Did you meet online?
We did.
might have.
It was actually the original Facebook dating site.
Yes.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not Cowboys.
Dirtbikesonly.com?
Dirtbikesonly.com. That's right.
Yeah. I had a pretty big range, from Bowling Green to Swanton here.
There you go. So what year was you working at Honda East?
I remember that.
This is another story.
Yeah.
He does remember that.
I do.
I used to get him parts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just give me parts.
It did. 2007. I started January 2nd of 2007. I graduated high school in 06 and I started there in 07.
Because I bought an 06 from them.
That was a leftover.
It was a leftover.
We had
I
a
bought
bunch
it
of
in
them. Yeah.
07. Yeah.
Yamaha?
Honda.
No, Honda.
Oh, Honda.
Honda.
Okay.
Honda 250s were
Yeah.
an abundance of Honda 250s back then.
I bought that sitting in a hotel in Ithaca, New York. I was out there working, been there for like 3 weeks, was bored in the hotel one night and bought a motorcycle online. Anyway, so we were talking about that. So that's, basically 07, something like that.
Yep.
And he's, always did the parts for me there at the dealer there. Of course, I had a street bike too. He got me some stuff for my street bike, and then we sort of got together and, started working, just getting parts and sort of followed him around. But, back to where my story was going after I went on a different direction. But so, off-road's been it. Back in the day when you could tinker with the suspension yourself, I used to play around with it and get it to what we wanted to work and make it work. But this new stuff, other than looking at it, I could probably take it off the bike, but that's about as far as I go. And so I told Mitch, Mitch is here. He's out there doing suspension for him, for motocross stuff. And I told him, like, well, I'm not a motocross guy.
Right.
This bike's going to Arizona. We're going to be riding over rocks, sharp rocks, round rocks, dirt, hard stuff, sand, make this thing go. Now, I'd been riding out there prior to him working on my suspension. So finally got my own personal bike after we did all the kids' motocross bikes and all that kind of stuff. Got my own personal off-road bike, had him do it, and we head to Arizona. And so a friend of mine out in Arizona, we've got a couple of trails we always go on. And so this one trail takes you down into a gully. You shoot across a rock garden the size of basketballs.
Right.
And that takes you across this river, and the size nothing but rock. And then you back up and up out of the hill. So, prior to that was come into it, you're doggy paddling, you're slow, it's rolling around and all that kind of stuff. And, I do all I can do to stand up. I was too afraid to go across it very fast. And so we're out there. He done my suspension. Now he's like, I'm not sure, I don't do a lot of desert stuff. And like, you can't do any worse than what it is, right? It's stock,
Right.
And so I go out there, I'm following Marty. We're in third gear. We come zipping through there. I'm trying to keep up with them and doing my best. And I get up the other side of the hill and realize, shoot, I just come across that rock garden in third gear
Yeah.
and never touched the full ground. And I was like, I don't remember even feeling the rocks. So we worked our way back up. So we got cell service, and I called him and said, "What did you do to my bike?" It's like, oh my God,
you can ride it.
It's and that's, we're in a lot of single track stuff, the rock stuff. And so it's bouncing all over the place, and you're doing, and all of a sudden like, man, this bike runs so nice, rides.
What year is this?
I think so. I remember that it was Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving,
actually.
yeah.
It was Thanksgiving Day. I think maybe 2008 or 9.
No, yeah.
So we didn't meet on my first run at Honda East. I worked for Honda East for a year.
Okay.
Left and came back. We met on my second term.
Okay.
So
I didn't know you were there twice.
It was. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, they got rid of him once, and he came back.
I had a letter of recommendation when I left. So
they recommend him.
Yeah.
Leave.
Recommend you to leave the state of Ohio. Please don't come back.
Don't come back. No, like you say, you were like, then you were also basically parts.
So my first run at Honda East, I basically got out of high school, had a full ride to college, and it wasn't for me. I spent a semester in construction management to get a bachelor's degree in construction management. It wasn't for me. And dropped out. Didn't tell my parents. I sold the book.
Where were we going?
What's that?
Where were you going?
Bowling Green State University.
Okay.
Yep.
I tried that once.
Yeah.
For a semester.
Yeah. See? We have something in common.
I thought about it once.
Yeah. The drive killed me. Couldn't do it. Couldn't do it.
Sold my books for gas money to get to the racetrack. And my parents found out about 2 months later and made me get a job. I detailed cars for about 3 months, got a job at Honda East, and the rest is history.
So you did parts first, though, right?
So I did parts there. I started in the back. I was shipping and receiving. They let me ship the boxes out to the dealers. That was all I did there. I think I spent maybe 60 days doing that, and I got promoted to the counter. I spent maybe 9 months at the counter, and then decided I wanted to pursue a mechanics degree.
Okay.
So I went down to MMI in Florida.
I did not know that.
Yep.
Okay.
So I left Honda East. I spent a year and a half in Florida. I'm technically certified in Kawasaki and Yamaha, I think. I think those were the 2 degrees. And it doesn't matter now, I guess, because that was a long time ago. Bikes have changed a lot, but
They got round tires now. That's square.
Yeah, right. But yeah, so I spent a year and a half down there, and I worked at dealers down there. I actually developed an online store for a dealer down there. And Honda East saw that and said, "Hey, come back. We want you to develop our online store here." And they recruited me to come back, and I think I stayed there for 4 years, maybe. And that's when I started the suspension company. So I came back with a degree as a technician, and I said, okay, I'm doing sales. I need to keep this degree alive.
Right.
And when I was in Florida, I had 3 or 4 of my professors that actually had suspension shops. One of them actually had the shop in front of Redbud. It used to be called 911 Moto. So it was the building in front of Redbud Motocross Park.
Okay.
And that was a really successful shop in the 90s. They actually had bikes in Dirt Bike Magazine and Motocross Action.
Cool.
So he was one of my professors down there. And then my Yamaha professor, he also had a suspension shop. So I'm talking to these guys and kind of learning about the suspension side of the industry, and it clicked. I'm like, I think I want to do this. And I remember I had a 2008 YZ450F, and I've always been a big guy, so stock bikes have never been perfect for me. And I took it to this shop in Orlando.
Because that's where MMI is, right?
Yeah,
Is in Orlando?
MMI Orlando is where I went. And I took it to this shop in Orlando, and it was in this guy's backyard, basically. And he took me back there. He showed me. I said, hey, I want to get this thing sprung for me. I'm like, I just want to get it sprung for me. It's too soft. And he's like, yeah, man, I think you might need some valving. You're a little big for it. Like, let's talk about some things. And I'm like, no, I just want springs. So he's showing me the pistons and the shim stacks and how to really build a set of suspension.
Mm-hmm.
And, I still didn't believe him. I'm like, oh, it's a Yamaha. They handle perfect. You don't need suspension work on a Yamaha. It's got KYB, right? And, so he showed me all this stuff, and I got the bike back, and it handled terrible because I didn't listen to him. So long story short, I learned a lot down there. I had a few setups done where I kind of guided the path of where I thought it should go, and I was wrong. And I came back and I said, let's start a suspension shop. Let's learn. And it was 2008, end of 2008 when I decided to do it, and I launched it in 2009.
And for those that don't have any idea, never heard of it before, what is the official name of your suspension business?
So most people know it as turbo speed tuning.
Right.
That is what I launched in 2009. Today, it's obviously, there's a few other names behind it as well. We've built it a little bit bigger. It's Ryder Sport Group,
Right.
which under that is Ryder Power Sports, Turbo Speed Tuning, and Fathom Ride Co. So we've expanded the business, but it's still Turbo Speed Tuning.
Okay. And I guess, so you come back to the area, you get that going. I mean, who's like your first customer? I mean, how do you market a suspension company when you've not really done that? I mean, how do you climb that mountain, Mitch?
I honestly have no idea. I can't even look back and tell you how I did it, but I know who my first customer was.
Who was it?
Darren Alford.
I don't know that name.
It was Glenn Alford, because Darren was probably 13. So
Okay.
his dad came in and said, hey, I've got this KX100. My kid is too tall and too lanky. Can you make it not crash? I said, well, I can make the bike handle. I can't make your kid not crash. And to this day, I would still say that's true about Darren. I can't make him not crash.
It's right.
I don't know who that is. Is he a local guy?
Yeah, he's a local kid.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So, but yeah, he was my first customer, and
And you're doing this in your garage?
yep,
At the
he
house-
brought it
at
in
your house?
for. I did a top, maybe a full motor at the time, because at the time we did suspensions and motors. I think we did a full motor or maybe a top end, and then suspension job too.
Okay.
So
See, that's what he did with me. My first, really, I think even before you did suspension work, you did the top end of my 06.
I did a lot of Honda 250 valve train.
Because
A lot.
I used to have to put valves in it every year.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, oh, you got to put an air cleaner in it and change oil all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, I am, But I had put, every year, I put in valves, if not a brand new head.
Yeah.
And finally, I was just getting ready to get rid of it. And I said, we got to get it fixed. I took it to Mitch, and he put a new head in it, new valves in it. And it ran. It's like, man, I don't want to get rid of it.
I didn't put a head on that.
You didn't put a head on
I
that?
never replaced a head. No.
I think the other dealer did.
I might have told you I did.
Oh, that's probably.
I might have charged.
That's why that was.
I might have
He charged you for a head, but
I might have charged you double, but I
it
didn't
could
put
be,
a head on
'cause
that.
that was pounding. It was pounding valves, the valve seats right out of the heads, wasn't
Yeah.
oh yeah, they were
What
bad for
is this, a
that.
Honda 450? 250.
250.
it was a 250.
450s were about just as bad.
But yeah, put it together and ran excellent. Great running bike. Always ran.
I think
great.
it was an 05 actually.
Was it an 05?
It was your youngest boys. I think it was an 05.
Yeah, it was mine.
But
and that I bought that he was riding a 100 and about 3 weeks after I got it, decided he was going to take it through the back pasture. Then all of a sudden I didn't have a bike anymore. Like he's going to ride that. So he jumped from 100 to a 250 and it's like, hey, where's my bike going? But anyway, that's how it goes when you have kids. So,
I had two 2004 Honda 250Xs when they came out. 25 hours, both of them, valves tightened up, and that was it. And one of them was on day 3 in Poland. And tried to do a valve job in less than an hour the next morning. That never did one before, and had somebody guiding me, and so that was a DNF at that 6 days for me. So all these Hondas were just,
they were bad.
they were, everybody thought they were great, and then you get 3 days of riding in. Well, that's about 24 hours, and
Yep.
I'm not sure if you ever did a Honda suspension for me. Oh yeah, you did the
I did a
08.
lot, yeah.
My 08s.
Yeah, I did
a lot of
your 08.
KTMs.
I did a bunch of your Honda stuff
Did
actually.
you?
Yeah.
A lot of KTMs.
I did.
Husqvarnas.
I probably did 4 or 5.
Yeah, I can't remember all the bikes I had. So
that was back in 08, 07, 08, 09
yeah,
probably.
Yeah, because we all did. Yeah, AJ had bikes.
That was when I was first getting the business going.
yeah.
I started that business out of my parents' garage. I used to have to move a Prius and a 4Runner out every night. I'd move them out. I'd put the bikes in the middle of the garage, work on them, and then I'd put them against the wall and move them back in.
What would happen if you left the cars out? Parents upset?
Big trouble. Yeah, I wouldn't go over
He
well
wouldn't
with my
be
dad.
here today.
You didn't have an old strain building on the farm there, an old corn crib.
We did.
You could have wrestled a couple bikes in there.
There was a corn crib out back. It wasn't insulated though, so I had to move up to the front shop. Plus, it was closer. It wasn't as
Sure.
long of a walk,
Yeah. Well, nature calls. You gotta. Yeah, you don't want it that far of a
Yeah.
walk.
So we started it in there, and like I said, 08. It was an idea in 08. By the end of 08, I had stickers made. So I got these turbo stickers made,
Right.
and I started putting them on my bikes and my friends' bikes.
My trailer.
Your trailer, yep. Back of your cars.
It's on there still today. It says turbo
Yeah,
still inside
I'm
of
sure
it.
it does.
Out right out
Yeah,
back.
it's
It
It's
does.
probably a little faded, but it's still there.
No, it's peeling a little bit,
Okay.
but it still looks good.
Darn good sticker. That's,
Good- it was a
that's
good
long
sticker.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 09, we started doing suspension. First customer was Darren Alford. I did some of your stuff. The first fast kid in the area we did was Andrew and Kyle Keller. They were fast at Delta
Okay.
back in their
Yep,
time.
I remember
Killers.
that name.
Yep.
Yeah, so that was one of the first faster kids we did, and I kind of worked my way up that Delta chain. I worked with the local kids and tried to make Delta my space.
Sure.
And I think I did that. I rode there until 2012, I think.
Did you have a lot of learning curves? I mean, is you're an entrepreneur? Again, you're kind of. I mean, did you have any major hurdles or
It was
anything?
pretty low overhead. So I wouldn't say like business hurdles. It was
Yeah.
more of like hurdles of finding your market, finding what your time is really valued at.
Yeah.
Because I learned everything along the way. I still learn today. I mean, him and I learn together every day. We learn something today.
Right.
So it's
Don't come and do a podcast.
Yeah.
You learned that.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
learned
that was the second thing we
Oh,
learned
that's the
today.
second
if you
thing.
want to do a podcast, Marty and I can literally save you days
Days,
of time
yeah.
of how to do this.
So you're talking about hurdles. Being in a car business, my hurdle was technology. Being in a dealer, I got technology taught to me every day, and I think Tyler can he can attest to that. How big a hurdle is it for you to stay current? I mean, they one year they got air shocks and they don't have air shocks. Now they got springs in one fork and they don't have it in the other fork. I don't want you to give me your secrets of how you stay current, but How hard is that to stay current on as this stuff is developing? I mean, I'm sure Honda and those guys aren't out there going, "Hey, man, here's our new setup,
no,
and here's what we can do."
Right.
So
Honda doesn't know who I am. So.
yeah, well, they probably
They
do.
don't text you.
They probably
Hey,
do
we got
know
this
who
new
he is.
suspension coming out.
He's on the list.
We haven't texted lately.
Yeah.
Suzuki every now and then, but they're I'm just kidding.
They need help.
Yeah.
So how do you keep current?
So, I mean, I would say coming into it, like 2009, there was there was really three things you worked on. There was a KYB Triple S fork, which is still current today. There was a KYB cartridge fork, which is, I mean, it's still current on some things. And then there was a Showa twin chamber back then. So there was three sets of suspension you needed to know. So I would say, you know, it probably was a year in and I had a pretty good grasp on that stuff. Just because I knew a little bit coming into it and I learned a lot. You know, when you're only doing three different things, think about a mechanic working on an engine. All you work on is a YZ250, a CR250, and an RM250. It's all you work on all day long. And it's not that hard to pick up the little pieces of what you, maybe the flaws you find inside those motors because you're opening the same motor every time. That's basically what I had to work with back then.
So they're all the same. They're set up the same. How do you figure out what you're going to do better than the factory?
So they're not set up the same. They're all a little different, but it's the same components. You know, you're dealing with the same bodies, mostly the same pistons. Sometimes they're a little different, but the shim stacks are always altered to the size of bike or the weight of rider that Honda wanted the bike to fit. So you learn a lot over the years of really, you know, of what a bike was supposed to be set up for out of the box. You know, if a bike was set up for 160 out of the box, and then like if that's a CR250, and then you open a CR450, CRF450, and you can see the valving difference between the two bikes, you understand what they're trying to accomplish. Like I said, it's more of a repetition thing. Back then, I had three types of suspension to learn. People didn't ride KTMs yet on motocross tracks. So I literally had 2 to 3 types of suspension to figure out, and it was repetition. If you do something long enough and keep working at it, you figure it out.
So do certain shocks have certain quirks?
I was just gonna ask that. Like, are your quirks, or is there a suspension out there that you're like, oh gosh, not one of these again?
For sure.
2009 Honda.
So that's 09, right? We're talking 08, 09. I thought my business was going to be dead in, what year was that? 2013. So I had a pretty good few years, 9, 10, 11, 12, 4 good years. So 4 good years in my parents' garage, literally built this brand out of my parents' garage. I move in 13, Honda comes out with an air fork. And I said, this is the end of it. I said, nobody's going to need me anymore because they can put air in their fork and make it stiffer. Why do they need me? They don't need anybody to change shim stacks and swap springs. All they have an air pump for that now. I couldn't have been more wrong. I received more air forks that year than what I would have received in spring forks because they were not set up well out of the box.
Was it not set up well, or was it that end user couldn't figure out how to set it up?
The first year, it was the issue. The major issue in 13 was that they under-damped it. Honda relied too much on air to keep the fork up in the stroke. They had a shock that was basically a shock off the prior year model. A little different, but same basic idea. And they put a fork on that was, Honda thought that they could use the air to keep the fork up in the stroke. And it didn't work. There was a few issues that is still the best air fork built. You can put a 13 Honda. It's a KYB. What is that one? PSF1.
Yeah, PSF1.
The PSF1 air fork on a current bike. And they're still running them at the factory level. I'll put it to you that way. Star Racing still runs a 50-50 air spring setup in their Yamahas. And it's based off of that fork.
Because I know.
But it wasn't right in 13. In 13, it was their first year, and it just didn't work.
On the Honda.
Honda and Kawasaki that year.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Even today, the air forks are still very finicky. I know, a couple guys out in Arizona that race and stuff like that. They're always out there adjusting the air a few pounds one way or the other. And, for the average rider, nobody, I mean, we don't worry about the suspension to begin with. Why would we worry about air in the fork,
Right.
So, it seems like, and I think you've done a conversion for us too. I think Husky, I think you did a conversion for us and stuff and went back to springs. But that seems like, where you were saying you thought the world was coming to an end. But, when I saw that, it was like all I saw in my mind was issues,
It's funny because Honda saw dollar signs. They said, we're going to air. We're going to save money. We're going to cheapen these bikes up and we're going to save money. And they did. If you look at their progression, 13 and 14 had an air fork, decent air fork. 15 and 16 had a very, very cheap air fork. It was basically a cartridge fork charged with air. And it was a total flop. It did not work. You really couldn't get it valved that well. And the nail in the coffin was when Suzuki came out with that same fork on their bike with additional clickers, additional adjustments. Suzuki put more money into their forks in 2016 than what Honda did. Paint that picture for you.
Yeah.
So Honda, they were pulling back, and Suzuki was still trying to make this air fork thing work. And at the end of the day, come 2017, everybody threw everything out and went back to springs.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm getting at is, I thought the air fork was my doom. I just moved out of my parents' garage. I bought a property with a decent sized shop to build this business, and here comes the air fork, and it took off. I mean, we did a lot of business in 13 and 14, heavy business. We did a lot of air forks.
So it's like, they come out with a kind of a cheap way of going about business, but then it helps a guy like you.
Yep.
Yeah, just being in the automotive business and just seeing mechanical stuff. When I saw what they did that, I'm thinking, what kind of issues you're going to have with a fork like that. And it just seemed like every time I saw them, everybody was adjusting it. And they, we got to go up another couple of pounds. We got to go down a couple of pounds. And like I said, when you're sitting in a racetrack and you've got history and you've got that stuff, that's great. But for me out in the middle of the desert, carrying a little hand pump because, leaking some air or doing whatever.
Yeah,
it never seemed, and it never seemed like you could never find that happy medium even with it, to be out there riding in the desert, to be able to ride all the different terrain we were riding.
Right.
Yep. So for me, it was like, okay, it was interesting when we changed up our off-road bikes from, air to spring again and kept on riding, So now you bought a property in what year was that?
I closed on my property in the end of 2012. So I spent 3 to 4 years in my parents' garage. I started on that new property in 13.
Where was it at? I guess I don't recall that.
So I still live there. It's in Bowling Green. So
okay.
I bought 2 acres in Bowling Green with a decent sized shop on the back of it. Separate driveway, set up to do business out of without having to, invade your personal privacy.
Right.
And I spent.
It's hard to do because every time I go by, I go stop. I still haven't got lunch yet or dinner, but
we keep the garage door closed when you drive by.
Does.
They see you pulling.
Turn the lights out.
The
lights go out.
Shut the door. Lock the door. Lock the door.
The shades.
We've been trying to do that at the new shop. It hasn't worked though.
Yeah, well, I've only been there twice.
Twice today?
I brought donuts the first time.
Yeah.
That was a nice welcoming gift.
That's what I thought.
We still
I ate half of them, but
you did. We appreciate it though.
No. So let's talk about that. So went from your house to now you are.
Where are you at now?
So we have built this into. Tyler and I have. Let's step back a couple steps here.
Oh boy.
Let's talk about the last year of our lives. So
let's not. It's been a tough year.
Let's talk about the last year. So I think around 2017, 2018, I decided I never stopped doing suspension, but I decided I wanted to have a job in the industry as well. So I started as a rep for MTA Distributing. We sold shot race gear, Shoei helmets, TCX boots, Scott goggles. We were a distributor, lower on the totem pole, not a Parts Unlimited, but we had our place in the market. Company went out of business. Bought by a Canadian firm, went out of business. Really unfortunate chain of events. I I got back on the job market, kept looking. I landed a job with Liat. I was the regional sales manager for them for the East Coast, basically everything from Texas to the ocean, Texas to Maine, Texas to Florida, East Coast. And I had 8 reps under me. Good job. I landed this job and I thought it was my dream job. Worked my way up through the industry, and it was a fun 4 years. It was a really good time. I learned a lot. Working my way up, learning from people that have done big things, right? COVID hits. I'm 3 months into Liat. I get laid off like everybody else. We had a layoff period, and I'm like, I'm not going back to work. I'm 3 months in. This company's not bringing me back. There's no way.
Right.
The industry was already hurting before we came into this. It's going to flop. And Tyler and I were just talking about this earlier at dinner, actually. And I remember I said, you know what? If I'm not going back to work, I need to concentrate on turbo. It's time to really push this turbo thing again. And the day I got laid off, I went out there and just started doing everything I had. Everything I had out there, I started pushing out the door. And I remember the first customer walking through the door after COVID. It was weird. First guy that walks through after this virus, hits. And it's like, man, I don't know how people are going to act and if it's going to be weird. And we all had our masks on, that's what you do during the coronavirus.
During a pandemic.
During a pandemic. And walks in, we exchanged information. We got the setup right. And I'm like, okay, I got a job. I got a job for the week. I'm laid off. I got some work. He left, and it was like the tides rolled in. It was unreal. The amount of work that came in during that time I was laid off was it was almost inspiring.
Yeah.
It just completely, I did more work in 60 days of being laid off than I would normally do in half a year.
Wow.
And we got called back to work. I went back to Liat. We all got called back, but I never really went back mentally.
Yeah.
I had this motivation that, I need to keep on this turbo thing. Like, what am I doing? And
why do you let's unpack that a little bit. Yeah. Why do you think that was? Was it, I hate to assume, was it people were getting some stimulus money and, I can now get my forks done, or bored, or
this is pre-stimulus. So this was people are locked up in their house, or people are unable to, they're not working. Same thing as me. Everybody got laid off at the same time. And within 5 days of that, it just started rolling in.
Yeah.
People I'm stuck at home. I'm going to ride my motorcycle. And all of a sudden it took off. And I took all my focus off of my day job, and I went 100% into this. And it was unreal.
Yeah.
I went to the races all year last year and tried to get my name out there and just talk to people, and it completely changed the direction of what this was going.
Yeah.
Up until the last 12 months, I never saw this as a full-time venture, and now I'm busier now than I was when I had 3 jobs. So it's crazy.
I have a theory on this a little bit. So my theory on this deal is, again, he's been out there in the market. A lot of companies, I think a lot of different companies have been there. They've been out in the market. They're doing a job. People know of them. If you ask anybody around, they know turbo.
Right.
Have they had their suspension on? No. Yes. No.
Maybe.
I've really been wanting to do it. It's there. They know who does it. And I think when the pandemic started, just like he said, now they're at home, and now like, you know what? Hey, it's April, right? Things start coming. Well, man, we got to get right. Because everybody in mind was still thinking racing's still going to go on. This is going to jump. We're going to get through this pretty quickly. Hey, I got some time to get the kids' bikes. I got time to get my bike.
Right.
Well, then if you watch Facebook, people were tearing their bikes down and getting decals, and they were getting all this stuff done because now all of a sudden they've got 2 weeks, 3 weeks prep time, getting paid. And I think as they were doing this stuff, all of a sudden they're going like, wow, I really should get that suspension done.
Right.
I really should try this out or try that. And and that's when all of a sudden they have the time to go out there and pull them off. because I didn't have time to pull my stuff. I don't think I've ever pulled a set of forks off for a shock.
Not for me.
I dropped it off at his house and he did it. But now these guys are already pulling things apart and going, well, shoot, I've got them apart. Let's take them over to Mitch.
Right.
You know, because like you say, for the last few years, I tell them to go someplace else, but if they have to have somebody done by the suspension, I tell them to go to Mitch.
Sure.
Right. But no, I mean, you're out there talking about what you need to do. And like, yeah, I need to get them over there. I don't have time. I mean, for me to sit there, put the bike up, tear it completely apart, let it sit there and come home at night trying to fix stuff, I just don't have time. So guess what? I'm riding it. Yep. But now we've got this vacation time that we're getting paid at. Now I can do all the neat cleaning things and stuff like that. And I think it just gave the people some time to look at what they want to do.
Assess the situation.
And what's better than working on the dirt bike?
Right.
Now they got a chance to do it. They can go out there and spend the whole morning, day, or whatever working on the dirt bike.
Right.
Not trying to work on it 5 nights to try to get it ready.
Well, how many dads or husbands got told, get out of the house, you're driving me nuts, go work on your bike?
This makes a very nice bed.
Does it?
Yeah. I put a mat down here. That's where I'm sleeping.
Well, you got.
You could double bunk
under
if
this thing. Yeah.
If AJ gets kicked out,
yeah,
that's good.
But no, I think that's a little bit about what happened. People were able to say, and then you can't go anywhere. Yeah. And so now all of a sudden the kids are around too. If it's a family type deal,
right?
And now you got your dad saying, "Hey, let's take this apart.
Let's get her done."
And some people you saw working on their own suspension. Some people were doing whatever. And so I think it was really a bonding time.
Right.
It wasn't a great time. But
right.
It was a bonding time for a lot of families.
Yep.
Time that some guys got together and actually got to play around. We actually got to play and spend some quality time with the hobby.
I think that's a fair assessment and probably pretty accurate. I'm sure that's probably what you guys are seeing. And so how did you guys get connected in we're going to kind of go down Tyler's path a little bit here, but I guess where did you guys meet? If you want to jump in there,
so
make sure you eat that microphone.
There's some discrepancy between how we met.
Was that online too or Facebook?
Yeah, how online goes. No, so we met in high school. He says it was at a pep rally, and there was some sort of altercation between me and him about like, oh, your engine sucks, your suspension sucks, and stuff
really?
like that.
Wow.
Apparently,
okay.
Yeah,
I don't
like that.
I don't remember this ever happening. So I think
it's so common.
So I remember it meeting him in study hall.
Was he asleep? Was Mitch
He
sleeping?
might have been.
So
Yeah.
was he? Were you like a
He was
airplane,
trying to
throw the
he was trying to
airplanes
sell
at
his
the
books
teacher?
off, wasn't he?
Probably.
I goofed around a lot. I had fun.
He had purple hair at the time.
Oh no,
Yeah,
no.
I had hair at the time.
I could say that may be the case.
So the way I remember it, study hall, and he's like, "Hey, come here," and I was like, "All right, what's this purple-haired freak want from me?" So I'm walking up. I was like, "Hey, man, what's up?" And he's like, "Hey, you ride dirt bikes, don't you?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, I'm Mitch." I'm like, "Hey, I'm Tyler." And we just kind of started talking about bikes, he's like, "Do you race?" I was like, "No, I'm wanting to get into it, yada, yada, yada." Because I started riding at 8 years old. But,
Okay. And you're from Bowling Green?
Yeah, from Bowling Green.
Okay.
So I started riding at 8, and then eventually worked up to a full-size race bike, stuff like that. And my parents didn't quite want me racing yet, and I was probably 15 at the time or something like that. And then Mitch was like, no, you need to come race. I was like, I want to. And he's like, no, we should do it. And I was like, okay. So he calls me. He's like, hey, there's a race at Sandusky Valley this weekend. You got to do it. I was like, my parents don't want me racing. He's like, no, just tell them that it's an open ride. I was like, really? You think that'll work? He's like, yeah. So Mitch shows up in the morning. I talked to my parents. Like, yeah, Mitch wants to go ride at Sandusky Valley. And they're like, it's not a race, right? Like, no, not a race, just an open practice. So Mitch picks me up the next morning, load up the bikes.
Was the fear of getting hurt at a race or because,
Yeah, I think I don't think
they're just nervous about the whole
I think they were just nervous about the whole thing.
Yeah.
They didn't. they didn't think I was quite ready for it.
Yeah.
Wasn't sure about the association you were going.
Yeah, I
with,
mean, yeah,
It might have been me.
but
I was gonna say.
You should have dyed your hair color different.
Yeah.
different color or something.
I did the next week.
yeah, no, I think he was back to normal when he picked me up. So yeah, so we go to Sandusky Valley. Go to like have my buddy's friend sign me up. Like his dad like signs me up as his kid, and
Highly illegal.
highly
I was gonna
illegal.
say, which is not even.
Yeah,
Don't
no.
recommend this. You actually
Yeah,
parents.
don't do this, kids.
please.
This is a bad idea. We
Yeah.
do not condone this
Yeah,
type
this is
of
what
behavior.
not to do.
This
Please
is yeah.
don't do this.
Disclaimer. We'll put it.
Right.
We'll put a little
Warning.
tagline along
Yeah,
the bottom
So-
of the page there.
So yeah, I get my butt kicked at the track, like jump the gate, like completely jump the gate. Like
Did you make the turn?
I did.
Okay.
So for once in my life, I out cornered Mitch Gerwin. So
Look at that.
so look at that history book. So yeah, but then we get done with the race and everything. We go home. Dad's like sitting outside and
So you don't have a trophy.
no, oh God, no,
Okay.
no.
So which is
you're
probably a good
missing.
thing.
You're missing a part, buddy.
What?
You made it
Oh.
through the race healthy.
I did,
You
yeah.
crashed after the fact practice riding.
Oh my word.
We
Oh,
rode,
yeah.
we rode
Yeah,
after
that's
the
right.
race. You
That's
didn't
right.
crash during the race.
No, I didn't.
Yeah. So I was right. Racing is safe.
Yeah, racing is safe. Practicing is dangerous. So I get home, Dad's outside, and he's like, "So how was it?" And I was like, "Oh, it was good. Yeah, yada yada. Track was fun." Mitch goes, "I won."
Oh no.
Dad goes,
Won what?
"What do you mean you won?"
Practice.
Mitch, I practice. I won practice.
Larry, I won practice.
Well, Tyler, I gotta go. See you, buddy. So I'm just sitting there with Dad, and Dad just gives me the look, and he's like, "You raced, didn't you?" "Yeah." "How'd you do?" "Not too good. I didn't get last though." He's like, "All right." So that was
Don't
it.
tell your mother.
Yeah, pretty much. He's like, "We'll just keep this between us." I was like, "All right, cool," because like if Mom found out, which Dad ended up telling Mom like the next week when we were racing at Delta, and Mom's freaking out.
Oh
and
boy.
he
This
hasn't.
isn't his first time here.
Yeah, that's exactly what my dad said. So yeah, so it's like I had a better chance of getting hurt in the pits by my mother than I would actually if I would stay out on the racetrack. So,
Oh man.
but anyway, so yeah, so that's kind of how me and Mitch met, and
This episode is brought to you by Ryder Power Sports, located in Waterville, Ohio.
Ryder Power Sports provides a host of services for your motocross and off-road machine. Ryder Power Sports is the home to the ever-famous turbo speed tuning, and now Fathom Ride Company.
Give Ryder Power Sports a call at 419-601-0421 and keep an eye out for their spring grand opening.
yeah, so went through high school. Actually went down to Florida during like spring break or something, kind of check out MMI, see if that was something I wanted to do. And I was like, nah, I don't know. I don't know if it's quite for me. I don't really know if I want to live down in Florida for a while. So I ended up going to the Power Sports Institute in Cleveland.
Okay.
So I did that, came back, and
What's the difference?
the name,
Really?
pretty much. I mean,
Yeah.
pretty much the same format.
Are they still backed by the name brands too?
At the
time,
they
PSI was the only one that had KTM.
yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we had
At the
KTM.
time. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got my hands on some KTM stuff, and I was like, "Yeah, this is weird."
Didn't MMI change their name?
They were bought by Universal Technical
Yeah.
Institute.
Yeah.
They were.
UTI.
They're
I hear
still
UTI,
MMI.
and I'm in healthcare, so I always
Yeah,
think
right.
of urinary tract
Right.
infection. But anyway,
Yeah. So it's still MMI, but it's owned by UTI now.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I thought I couldn't remember the name.
Yep.
Yeah.
How long a program is that?
It was 2 years. It was 2
2-year
years. So they like cramped everything all in like one shot. So it's like, oh
So
my
does that
god.
make you a master mechanic? Does it certify you?
Yeah, you got some certification in certain manufacturers and stuff like that. So, so I walked out of there with some decent certifications.
And dealers, is it approved training so dealers can pick you up?
Yeah.
Feel comfortable
Yeah,
that you're
yeah. So like,
training on the property?
like I had Yamaha certification, so it's like Yamaha dealers were like, "Yeah, sure, come on in." Unfortunately, when I graduated, it was in the fall. So then,
Sorry, guys.
so
Time's up. Gotta leave.
Up.
Thanks a
Yeah.
lot for coming, guys.
So yeah, I graduated in the fall, And a lot of the dealers in the fall time are like, sorry, it's our slow time. We're not hiring. I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm this kid with...
What year is this? You're kind of out of there.
2010 is when I graduated PSI. So,
okay.
And then my buddy actually got a job at a dealership. He called me up. He's like, hey man, you need a job? I was like, yeah, dude, like student loans are starting to come in and I need a job. He's like, well, hey, we're looking for a parts dude. I was like, cool. It wasn't a parts dude job. Like, it wasn't a parts counter job. It was stack giant ATV plows in the warehouse and stuff like that. Mind you, I have a broken collarbone at this time.
Okay.
So, and I didn't let them know this because I was like, well, I don't want this to like hinder like me possibly getting this job. So I'm stacking like 50-pound boxes with a broken collarbone like over my head.
Disclaimer, always be honest with your employer.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So that was a complete nightmare. But luckily within that like 2-week span, like talking to the service manager, he's thinking, you know what, you kind of sound like you might know what you're doing. I'm
right.
like, well, yeah, dude. Like I've been working on bikes since I was old enough to hold a wrench. Like, yeah, I can do this. And he's like, do you want to work in service? And yeah, as a tech. And he's like, no, service.
Now, where's this at?
Finley. There was a dealership.
Is that American Power
American Power
Okay.
Sports. Yep. So, so I was service advisor for a while, and then eventually worked my way up to service manager, and I was just like, this is just too much headache. I mean, just put me back in the shop where I'm happy. So
just wrench and
do your own thing. Yeah, so they put me back in the shop, and I was just like, so much better. Just spin wrenches all day. So I was like the engine guy, like building engines. Like, it was nothing for me to have like 12 to 15 engines tore down at a time and just knock them off.
They sell like all brands, but KTM, of course.
They were Yamaha, Suzuki, Polaris, Can-Am. I think that's it. I don't know. So yeah, so there was a lot, and then I eventually got my master's certification in Can-Am spiders. So, which basically, if you know how to use a multimeter, you can work on a.
Oh really?
Oh, it's nothing but electrical. Like they have very few mechanical issues. It's just electrical problems, and for some reason, I'm a freak, and electrical makes sense to me. So, like EFI bikes, I'm like,
that makes one of us. I can't stand.
It's awesome.
Stand touching things that could potentially kill me, and I can't see.
No, it's not the volts you have to worry about. It's the amps. So everything's low amperage on these. So you might just get a little tingle, but yeah, won't kill you though.
Make my hair stand.
Yeah, but no, and then going back with racing and everything, my '96 KX 125 kind of had some issues with the engine, so. Dad coming from the automotive background and drag racing, building engines, stuff like that, taught me how to build an engine, rebuild, blah, 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 blah. And then eventually got into modifications, how to port a cylinder, all this stuff.
Nice. Do you have your own tools? I mean, your own ability to do all that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Nice. Oh, yeah. I port tons of cylinders and cylinder heads, 2-stroke and 4-stroke. Like, you need porting done, I can do it.
You can do it.
Yeah. I know what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
So, because I've played around on a lot of stuff, played around on
a lot of stuff.
Yeah, a couple. There's been a couple that
I tried my hand at porting.
Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah.
Well, throw that one away.
Yeah. You can't go too big. Can't. Yeah. You want to make sure your angles are just right and you don't go too big. Otherwise.
So, like cars these days, motorcycles, what I'm getting from you is not involved that. But in car wise, I mean, nobody really rebuilt an engine wrench anymore.
No, it's just swap.
Car goes in, you go to the dealer, they give you a crate motor and throw it in, you go. So they're not doing that with motorcycles yet.
No.
So
I hope they don't.
When an engine needs to be rebuilt, unless you scatter it and break all the cases and do all that stuff, you're buying a motor. But so there's still places out there for somebody to build a motor.
Mm-hmm.
How many good engine shops are around?
I mean, they're out there. I think they're few and far between.
Like I say, locally, what do you think?
Yeah, man.
A few.
There's a few. There are a few.
A few.
You know, because
I'm not gonna say no. Everyone is bad at building engines, but me. Like that's
well, you know,
that's not.
like back in the day, you could say who rebuilds carb motors.
Right.
Everybody did.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
so, you know,
All the dealers did, didn't
yeah,
they?
all
Yeah.
the dealers
Yeah.
did, you know, shops did. We did a lot. You know, we had an independent shop, and we did a ton of rebuild motors, right? But you know, when you say motors, you talk about motorcycles. You don't either you do it yourself,
Right.
or the bike goes down the road, you buy a new bike. You know that you don't hear as many people going, I'm going to take my engine and go have it rebuilt,
Yeah.
unless you're putting in some heavy money,
Right.
You know, you're talking performance stuff
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff.
Even just a rebuild on a 4-stroke. I mean, the 4-stroke rebuilds are so much expensive compared to the 2-stroke. The 2-stroke days was like, oh, $500 and it's all new on the
Well,
inside.
what are you running? 14,000 RPM in a 4-stroke now?
Oh yeah.
So, you know, back in our day, you
14.5 if it's the new Cowie 250F.
Is it?
It's
you know, back in the day, I was
it's
riding the older
stupid.
bikes. You hear it go thump, thump, thump,
Right.
thump. So, you know, what do you get? 600 or 800 RPM?
Yeah,
You know?
right.
No, but you know, now everything has to be, and
Yeah.
and now everything's lighter and everything's, you know,
Yep.
balanced, or the counterbalancing everything. So the engines are so, you know, so more detailed
Yeah.
anymore. For
And
the average guy to rebuild is tough.
One thing I've been noticing on the progression of these new engines is the durability. These manufacturers are taking a lot of extra steps to make sure that these engines are holding up. Prime example, Kawasaki's. Let's start back at 04 when they came out with their 4-stroke. I mean, that was a nightmare. That was
it really?
Oh, they were not good. They were time bombs. So then you fast forward even to like a 14 Kawasaki. I tore one down. It had probably close to 100 hours on it. Mm-hmm. The cylinder still had crosshatch on it. The piston wasn't super scored up. I measured it and I was like, this thing isn't terribly out of spec. Like, yes, it needs rebuilt, but it's like, it's just now getting there. So it's like, and the dude was fast.
Yeah.
He beat his bike. So it's like, man, this is crazy.
100 hours.
That's a lot of hours. That's a lot of hours.
Yeah, it's a lot of hours.
They've come a long way.
They have.
The Kawasaki Suzuki build.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, and
Kawasaki.
that's one of the things that I think they failed right off the bat, because, you know, Honda. That's why I went back to a Honda. You know, I was out of the bikes for a number of years, and my previous bikes were Hondas. You know, didn't do anything to them.
Right.
Change oil, change air cleaner, make sure everything's good.
Yep.
It ran.
Yeah.
I sold I had an old XR 350. It probably had 125,000 miles on it.
Right.
I never did anything to it well, I shouldn't say that. We first got it and you're supposed to do a 4-angle valve cut. That was the biggest thing. So when I got it, that's what we did. Okay. You know, but I rode that thing, 100, 200 miles every single weekend,
Yeah.
And so then got rid of it, the family started having family, decided to go back in. I get this 06 or 05 or 06 Honda. It had nothing but problems right off the bat.
Yep.
It's like, well, I bought Honda because Honda's always dependable. You get on them, you ride them. Well, I have that one. Then we get another one. And it just never was, the old air cooled things.
Yep.
It just, everything seemed to be happening. Like, well, what happened to the reliability?
They were trying to get more horsepower out of it, and it was three things basically. It was one, the material that they were using for the valve seats and the valves, and also the burn pattern inside the combustion chamber. It would heat up that right side intake. The way the flame would come across, it would get a hot spot on the right side intake, and it would make the metal soft, and that was the main valve that would suck up into the head. So that was unfortunately a bad flaw.
Do you think it's more of a an engineering, this is because everything's throwaway now, right? I mean, literally everything that we touch is throwaway. I mean, do you think that's kind of like part of it? Like you say, you're trying to crank out power. It's like, well, this is the consequence of
and their excuse probably was, well, this is a competition bike. If you look in the manual, it says to replace your cylinder head every 5 hours. Okay, I'm not a factory rider. I can't just buy $600 cylinder heads every other week. That's not feasible. So, but now everyone's going to like plasma coated cylinders and bridge box pistons. It's like, wow, this stuff is gonna hold up. But the one thing that just hit me the other day is, so a lot of the manufacturers, all your Japanese manufacturers, I should say, are running a hemispherical head, meaning the spark plug is right in the center of the head in the combustion chamber. They're making good power. And it was always the Hemi head. That's how, I mean, that was like, oh yeah, if you have a hemispherical head, you're going to produce great power.
Right.
But then you look at these Austrian bikes. You look at the KTMs, the Huskies, the gases. They're not running hemispherical heads, and they're putting out more horsepower than Japanese bikes.
Yeah.
Their spark plug's actually coming in on the side. And I was like, so you can just kind of throw the whole like, oh, the Hemi head is where it's at. You can throw that out the door and say, no, like this design, having the spark plug in the side, because again, that changes how the combustion occurs. That changes your burn pattern. Like it for some reason that just clicked with me the other day. I was like, well, wait a second. Like,
well, aren't the Austrian ones, again, I'm a 300 two-stroke guy, but aren't they a little bit more reliable four-stroke wise?
Yeah.
Than the Japanese.
Well,
bikes?
I mean,
They're
about the same.
I can see
They're about the
bikes used to
same.
always be reliable, more reliable than anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a different type of bike. Of course, you paid more. You're getting better equipment, better technology,
Right.
and I think they've always built a good bike.
Yeah.
Not that Honda hasn't, or Suzuki or
Right.
Kawasaki. It just seems like it's the typical buying a Mercedes versus a Chevy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're getting two different cars with two different pricing,
Yeah.
but all the little things that they do is made to last.
Yeah.
To be reliable.
And the Japanese are starting to catch up.
They're
to
starting
it.
it.
You're starting to see them mimic a lot of the KTM ideology on their components, and it's like, okay, I see where you guys are going.
It just takes them a long time. They don't catch up overnight.
Well, I think
That's
it's
the
I
hard
think
stuff.
well, I think it's because it's the Japanese mentality. If they're going to put
hierarchy they have.
if they're going to put something out, it's got to be perfect. It's got to be just
Right.
so. So, and unfortunately, I don't think we'll see any Japanese steel frame bikes just because of the cost of steel over there. But I think if the Japanese came out with a steel frame bike, all bets are off. Then you have a great handling bike and good horsepower. If they can squeeze a little bit more, maybe keep working on their head design. I know Kawasaki's got a really killer that finger follower valve train is really good. They've been running that in MotoGPs for quite some time now, and it seems to work. So I mean, Kawasaki is really starting to step it up, and they're kind of restructuring their company right now to where they can compete with KTM. I think like I just feel like Kawasaki has their crosshairs on KTM. They're tired of seeing Cooper Webb winning all the time. So it's like, no, we need to make sure we get the best bike out there so we can throw anyone on it to win. We miss winning because they used to be dominant back when Carmichael, Villapoto, all those dudes. So,
and I think that's exactly what happened. The Hondas, the Kawasaki's, the Suzuki's have sort of rode the wave that they've had. They've had some great runs. I mean, when you think about having a dependable bike, what comes to mind? A Honda.
Yep.
Honda's just got on the road. You know, I've never really been. I rode a few Suzuki's and stuff, but that's when you started coming out with that Austrian bike, the bar was set so high.
Oh yeah.
That it took a while for them to realize, like, wow, we're getting spanked. And it's normal for them to, the Australians, when they build a bike, they're building quality.
Yep.
So they were riding their wave a little bit. Like, oh, KTM's, they're doing their thing and they're ready to race. Yeah, right. And I think what happened is all of a sudden they got caught like, oh my gosh, we're so far behind at this point in time. And reliability is the biggest thing. It may not be in the race side of life. If I'm rebuilding my motor every time I go to a race, then what's reliability?
Right.
It's reliable as your mechanic.
Exactly.
Right. And it's not the bike. But when I buy 4 bikes for my grandkids or my kids and I can't get them to run, and they're having issues and they're doing this, they're looking to spend more money on something else. Because
it didn't take very long either. KTM came out with a linkage. That was their first year. We're going to be serious, right?
Yep.
2011, first year for a linkage on a KTM.
Game changer.
We're going to hire Michael Essie and Roger DeCoster. And I forget who all was on the team that year. But anyway, 2011, they put a linkage on. And they hired Dungey, I believe, in 12 or 13?
Yeah, 12, I think it was.
12?
I think he won in 13, didn't he?
Yeah. So all they did, they said, we're going to put a linkage on this and hire the right guy.
Yeah.
And, realistically, a lot of people didn't buy the 12, 13s, and 14s. But when that 15 factory edition hit, that then became the new chassis, that was when the game changing happened. So it took them 4 years from the linkage to figure out how to win.
Yep.
To be at the top of the sport and at the top of, selling motorcycles.
And, the Japanese bikes, the Japanese companies are sitting back and they're not doing anything because they're not making sales.
They can't do anything in 4 years.
Yeah.
They can't move that fast.
And they're not making any sales, so why do I want to invest?
Well, I remember distinctly back, like when the Great Recession hit, remember 08, 9, 10, 11?
Mm-hmm.
I remember reading Eric Burleson, which he worked for KTM, and I remember reading an article, and I thought, wow, okay, this is... So what the context was is basically... You're a manufacturer. How are you handling this Great Recession? And basically, KTM said, we're going to still keep spending money.
Yep.
And they did.
And they did.
It's paying off.
And it's paid off. I mean, because all the other ones were,
Yeah.
wallets got
who
tight.
else did that? Western Power Sports.
Yeah.
Did
Fly Racing is where they're at because of not pulling back.
they? Yeah.
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 Yep.
It's crazy because, bikes come and go. Now, the KTM and the Husky series, I mean, that has been off-road guys. That's what it's, been. It's been a higher priced bike, limited sales because it's more off-road people that want a quality bike. So it's not something they're selling every day. So, a lot of us, you feel like, man, they're going to ruin KTM. They're going to ruin it. Oh my gosh, they bought Husqvarna. We're done.
Right.
You should go buy a Beta.
Yeah. But,
Who would buy one of those?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
But you look at it and go, they're spending money like no tomorrow.
Right.
They can't sell a bike. I mean, nobody's selling bikes. Was it 8, 9? Was it 7, 8, 9, 10? When they had what Honda had. I mean, I bought an 08 and 10, I think. 08 leftover and 10
Leftover.
Oh, yeah.
and for $3,500.
Yep.
Right.
Jim tells me, he goes, oh, I got a bike for you because Andrew's in the 250 now, and now he's like, man, I want to have a 450. Like, no, I need a 450.
Yep.
I walk and he goes, there's a bike you want, brand new, 08, it's a couple years old, $3,500.
Yep.
It's like I bought it, and went, oh my gosh, and they were doing the kids' bikes. They were $600-700.
Yep.
Yeah.
They couldn't give them away.
Right.
And so you're like, in KTM here, they're throwing money at stuff like,
Right.
and I've been fortunate to go to some of the dealer meetings and you look at what they're spending and going, I can't believe they're spending this when, when's the last time Honda had a dealer meeting or Suzuki or Kawasaki?
Right.
Those guys, they haven't had a dealer meeting,
Not for the dealers, at least.
Yeah. And so you're looking at it going, wow, these guys are putting on the deals and, and selling bikes. So,
Well, I think we all know this, but I think the one fatal mistake, not fatal, maybe not fatal is a strong word, but one, when they stopped making the two strokes.
Yeah.
Like you said, the money. I mean, you replace the top end and, all that kind of stuff for the, a guy like myself who's a vet rider, you got a family. It's like, okay, I buy a 4-stroke and I got to spend $2,500 just to get it refixed when I could spend $500. I mean, I don't really like to work on my bike that much. I don't have the time.
Right.
Yep.
So like the 2-stroke for me is perfect because I just know if something goes haywire, it's not going to cost me an arm and a leg.
Right. I was thinking about that too, just this morning, actually. For some reason, Suzuki popped in my head. And I was like, man, Suzuki's hurting pretty bad right now. Like, they haven't really come out with a new bike. Like, no one's buying a Suzuki. I was like, what would save that company, save that part of their company? Bring back the RM 250 or the RM 125.
Yep.
Dealers wouldn't be able to keep them on the floor.
No.
People would be
not.
buying those things up, and Suzuki sales would be through the roof.
Yep.
It's like, just do it.
Yeah.
Like, fire up the old tooling, make those cases again, the cylinders, and start slapping that stuff out. Like,
Could you imagine an RMX?
oh yeah,
Off road. Those.
Yeah.
My dad had one.
Yeah.
It was like a
That'd be sweet.
95 or something like
yeah,
that.
That'd be
yeah.
sweet.
They sold a ton.
and the technology now in 2-stroke is just
Oh, yeah.
unbelievable.
Oh,
It's nothing now to, I mean, a lot of guys that I ride out in Arizona, they do dual sport because, we're doing some dual sport. They have a, off-road bike, it's strictly, then you do a dual sport. And so, you don't use a dual sport 2-stroke,
No.
Well, you sure do now.
Right.
Yeah.
These guys are zipping down there. They poured a little oil in the canister, be able to put pump gas in it now. And who was telling me, Marty said this last ride they did a couple months ago in Baja, one of the guys had a 2-stroke. They went into Baja with a 2-stroke,
Wow.
which
That's
you never
crazy.
would do.
That's
Which you're
crazy.
getting
That's
half the
gutsy.
mileage.
KTM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And so half the mileage, but yeah, you're still pulling up and getting gas. He put a bigger tank on it, so he's getting, what the mileage is. You get it with a regular 4-stroke, but he rode a 2-stroke all the way down.
It
300.
totally freaks me out not having to pre-mix my fuel.
Mm-hmm.
oh
my bike.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, okay, I
Yeah,
do what?
Pulling up to the pump and
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
doesn't make any
but I
sense.
tell you what, it's going to be great. I can't wait till this year when
Yep.
we go to the 6 days of Michigan in July, because I don't have to carry little containers.
Yep.
I can just fill up the little reservoir thing with the oil. The
And they're
KTM
saying
oil.
it's almost scary that you go through gas and you go through gas and you go through gas. And you're like, you still have oil in there?
Yes.
And the computer's got it dialed
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
So,
It has it all figured out. And that's only going to get better.
Yeah.
Especially with KTM. I mean, they're
Yep.
just, like you said, they spend the money.
Yeah.
They spend the money and it pays off in the end,
Yep.
But
So, back to you in the shop.
Yeah.
I'm always, like I said, being from the automotive shop, the days of a mechanic being able to do it all. Is that still the mentality in a shop, or is there still an engine guy, still a guy that changes tires?
Yes and no. So there is like an engine guy, there is a suspension guy. I try to be well-rounded. I can change a tire. I can obviously rebuild an engine, modify an engine, yada, yada, yada. Had I rebuilt suspension before? Yeah. Have I revalved suspension? Not until I started working with Mitch, and I understood the theory and the fundamentals of it. I didn't know the formula, and that's Mitch kind of showed me what it takes to properly valve suspension, and I'm like, okay, like this works. Like, so yeah, so I try to be as well-rounded in that field as possible, so I can do engine, suspension, whatever. I mean,
So you left the dealer first of the year?
yeah, so it was like,
well, it started during coronavirus.
yeah, it really did. Yeah, because
You got laid off, and I got laid off, and I said, "Hey, man, what are you doing?
yeah,
Let's build some
let's
suspension."
build suspension. So yeah, so it was cool. So yeah, and I enjoyed it. I was like, oh, this is something different,
a challenge. Maybe
Yeah,
a new challenge part.
Yeah, I'm very goal oriented, I guess. So it's like, no, I want to be the
I feel
best.
sorry for him. Setting goals,
I want to.
does
I
that?
want to be the best at suspension now. Like I want to make Mitch proud. So yeah,
Mitch Payton, I hope.
yeah,
Different Mitch.
different. Yeah, Mr. Payton. So
Mr. Payton.
so yeah, we started building suspension during COVID and stuff like that, and then I eventually went back to work, and I was doing my normal like dealership stuff. I'm like, this is boring. Like I would just be like standing there at my bench, like building an engine, just typical, just boring rebuild. I'm just, like another one. Like this is dumb. Like I want to try to revalve something. Like, come on, like give me a challenge. And then finally, like I hit up Mitch. I was like, dude, like, can we do something? Like I'm ready to get out of the dealership thing. And
Yep.
yeah, so now we're in Waterville, and it's awesome.
What street you on in Waterville?
Anthony Wayne Trail,
Oh, okay.
just outside of town. So it's trying to
Are
think.
you
That would
south
be
of town?
it would be just west of like downtown area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I go to Waterville. Well, I did go to Waterville. I live out here in Swan like Marty does. But my favorite breakfast place shut down.
Which one?
Dale's.
Oh, Dale's Diner.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I literally had a tear
Yeah.
running down my
It's
cheek. I'm
terrible.
like, are you kidding me? Like I that was just my go-to
Yeah.
place.
I heard
but
about that about 3 weeks ago that it was
Yeah.
coming.
Can't find
So
employees.
terrible.
Huh?
Yeah.
Terrible.
I say, and I don't know if this is, what makes the difference between working the dealership and what you're doing now. For me, when you're working for somebody, especially in a dealership, you don't get to see that end user, and that's one thing a little bit about the motorcycle side of life. You usually run across that end user
Yep.
a lot.
Yeah.
When's the last time you changed somebody's oil and go, oh, I know Joe, and talk to him sitting around the Walmart parking lot or something. You don't do it, you know?
Right.
But you can do a suspension today, and on Saturday be at the track and be talking to them.
That
you know?
yeah, that actually happened like 2 weekends ago. I went to the track and there's dudes there that I just did their suspension. So yeah.
So I think the satisfaction, I guess, if that's the word, is that you actually are closer to that end user now and see what you've actually done is actually out there working or not.
Right.
You know, and that's one thing I think, you know, being in your own business or being closer to that is, you know, the motorcycle industry gives you that because, you know, if you're in the motorcycle industry, then you're usually at most events of some way, whether it's riding racing or just hanging out, you know, cooking hot dogs.
Yeah.
So,
and the other thing I really like about what I'm doing now is we're building stuff to our specs or your specs or however you want to think of it that way. Whereas before it was build it to the manufacturer's spec, do it this way. And it's like, well, this way would be better. Like, no. Polaris says this or Yamaha says this. It's like, well, no, like I want to do it this way. Whereas now we have that freedom to
you're more freelance.
Yeah. It's like, well, this will work so much better. Like, let's do this, and then people love it.
Your whole end game is make it better.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. I don't want to make it what it was. I want to make it better.
What made you think of Waterville? I mean, just out of curiosity. I mean, it's you know, it is convenient.
We tried to get him over here, but Swanton wouldn't let him in.
Yeah,
Swanton wouldn't have
Swantucky kicked you out.
So I've been looking at doing this for a while. Obviously, I'm from Bowling Green. I thought about Bowling Green. I almost took a location in Bowling Green. It was ideal, but the location had to be central to Toledo, central to Bowling Green, central to Michigan customers coming down, Indiana customers coming over.
Yep.
Now, we're right off of Old 24, so we're right just south of 24, which runs into Fort Wayne. We're right off of 23, basically, 7 minutes from Honda East. It's a very easy drive for the Toledo clients, very easy drive for Michigan people. Same thing with people coming from the Findlay area.
Right.
So
you kind of met all the crossroads.
I never thought I would have the opportunity to put this in Waterville, and when it came up, I had to jump on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and their Chamber of Commerce is really good too.
They are. Yeah, they actually reached out to me. They want to do a ribbon cutting for a grand opening.
Oh, they should.
We haven't had a grand opening yet. So when we do that, we're going to have a ribbon
Mario
cutting.
bring the donuts.
That'd be great. Yeah. That'd be great, Mario.
Absolutely. No, I mean, that's real exciting. And I wish you guys all the best of luck, you know, because it is, I'm sure it's nerve wracking too, a little bit, you know, but you just stay focused. I mean, clearly there's a place in the market, you know, for you guys. You know, I'm assuming you've done all that research and all that kind of thing, but
it was a leap of faith.
Yeah.
But our customer base has been so supportive.
yeah.
Unreal. The customers that have came through and just supported us to make this happen.
Well, I saw on Facebook you just did Zach Parks.
Yep.
He's in the club,
Yep.
and so are you kind of trying to get your foot in the door and that more of the off road guys and gals too? You know, trying to get in the woods, if you will.
So historically, I've only done two-wheel motocross suspension. When I started out, it was only big bikes. I wouldn't even do 85s. And I brought 85s in, and then I brought 65s in, and then 50s. And then up until this year, we haven't even really looked at doing a whole lot of wood stuff. I would do it for Marty, but unless you really, had an in with me, we wouldn't do a whole lot of woods setups. So now we're doing off-road motocross. We did some lowering kits for a few guys recently for shorter guys.
Yep.
We're doing ATV stuff, which he doesn't really want me to talk about. But yeah, we're doing ATV stuff, which we've had a lot of success with, actually.
Yeah.
It's more work than we can handle at the moment.
What about the UTVs? I mean, anything with
right
that?
now we're staying away from those because we don't have the space for
The
it.
space, yeah.
But ATVs, and then we're getting involved with snowcross here in the end of this year.
Yep.
So we've got a snowcross team we're going to work with and do snowmobile stuff. Tyler did snowmobile stuff before.
Yeah.
That was actually his area of specialty.
Yep.
Okay.
At American Power Sports.
That was the only good thing about sled season was snowmobile shocks. I was just like, yes, just give me snowmobile shocks like all winter long. Like I don't want to do anything else. Just give me the shocks.
Yep.
So,
but yeah, the off-road market is something we're really trying to move into. It's not new to us. We've done a lot of off-road stuff. It's actually funny. I've got guys all over the country running my off-road stuff. I had a guy in California, would have been end of last year, a coworker of mine actually. He shipped it to me. It was a 500 EXCF, so it would have been the dual sport bike. And he's doing desert racing with it.
Okay.
And he said, "Hey, I want to have a setup done." And he sent it to me. We set it up, and he said it's the best stuff he's ever ridden. So
you've done at least 10 sets easily, or more.
It's like I said, suspension is, it's all about altering it to what the rider needs. If you know the rider and you know his speed and you know his size, you can make it work, no matter if it's desert, single track, motocross.
Well, it's the bar none the most important parts on your bike.
Yep.
And you very seldom do you see an off-road guy not have suspension work done.
Right.
Motocross guys, you'll see them come out with clapped out stuff and just run them, And that's why I keep telling him he's really missing that. I've had nothing but fantastic results, and I've had some fast guys ride my bikes, whether it's in a race or out west and that kind of stuff. And, other than a few, clicks here and there to make it, to their preference, they're out there like, wow, who did your suspension for you? I go, well, some guy out in Ohio on the flat grounds that does motocross, and it's like, I said, I can't say enough that, I say he's done at least 10, if not 20.
Yeah.
I don't want to say any numbers here, as my wife might hear. So, but,
we'll edit this out, Marty. It's okay.
Yeah. Just edit.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I said, when I went to him, I said, and he's like, oh man, I'm not quite sure. And I said, well, here's what we're riding. We're riding single track, rocky, ruddy, stone. It's granite. Here's what we're riding. We're hitting them sharp edged, bumps. And I think the last bike you did for me, it was like riding a caddy. I mean, it was just go out there and you run over it. But it was like when you hit those really sharp edged ones, it really rattled your cage. Brought it back. He goes out and he goes, I think you just need an adjustment. So he takes it out. I was trying to think where we were even when we were at the park.
We were in Arizona.
Oh, we were.
Yeah.
He takes it out, rides it for 20 minutes, does this and that, gives it back to me, and off we go. So it's just knowing what to do or knowing what to make.
Well, that's half the battle, knowing what to do. And,
in
a certain situation, like my dad and I, for example, like my dad is definitely more twitchy with the suspension than I am. Like back when I was racing a lot, I always used to just get it to where I want it, and I just left it alone. Get your sag right, get your clickers about right, and I can live with it. As long as I was just told I used to have Enduro Engineering do mine, and I always told them, I said, if you can just try to help me stay safe, when I can't see that little tree root or that log, that's what I want my suspension set up for. I don't care about whoops. I don't care about logs that I can see. It's the unknown thing when you're at speed through the woods, when it starts deflecting you, that's what I don't want. And, but yeah, I remember, a lot of enduros we rode, Dad would come in there and he's, clicking and he's like, oh, how's your bike? I'm like, I don't, just ride it, but it is so preferential to the person. Some guys are more pickier than others, and
it's amazing because I watch suspension because usually Mitch is there. He usually spends the whole time at our track fixing bikes and rides after hours because he doesn't have any time to ride. But it is when it gets hooked, you watch it. He'll go out there and tweak and tweak and tweak, and you see that back tire doing one of these going down a straightaway, and then he gets it hooked, and the back tire never comes off the ground. It's just driving forward. You go like, they got it dialed. You can see it go. The mechanic, the rider's not trying to keep her straight, and that kind of stuff. And you look at it and said, when he's on the ground, he's on the gas, that tire is hooked up and not doing anything but driving you forward, And you wouldn't think that's a big deal, when you're out, because you feel like you're fast no matter whether you just got it or whatever. You go out and you ride it, and but then when you start seeing, we've seen that in a number. We were watching Brock one day, and it was so funny because he was a little slower coming through this one corner, but when he came out of that corner, he just drove away from these guys. It's like he was hooked. There was no bouncing, there was no skipping, there was nothing. It's like he's like, how was he getting that speed? It's because his tire was on the ground.
Traction. Yeah,
he was running, and it was straight, and everybody else is doing one of these deals down down all the the braking bumps and all that kind of stuff, and that thing is just hooked. And you're like, that's how you win races.
Yeah.
You know,
it's so vital. I remember one time we were coming back from an enduro over in Indiana, and I had just did roll well, and I knew I was going to be bumped into the AA class, and it was Cody Maston and I heading back in the box fan. He goes, "You've got to get your suspension done now." He goes, "You're in the AA class, going to be next year. This is the last race of the year." He said, "You have to do it now. You know, you're not going to, you can't get any faster.
No.
You're not going to get any faster unless you take the next step.
Right.
You know, unless you do that, and makes a huge difference. It's hard to want to spend the money. Of course, sometimes
the first time you do it, it is.
It is.
I remember my first time spending the money. I told that story about in Florida. I told the guy I just wanted springs.
right.
I came back to Ohio, and guess what? I paid full price to have it done with valving because I skipped out on the valving the first time.
Right. Makes sense.
It's crazy.
It is. Well, we certainly appreciate you guys. You got anything left for him, Marty?
Well, I just
Anything?
want to make sure, over the years, I've been around a lot of people and, and been in the automotive business too, and it works that way too, that if you're going to get it done, not because Mitch is sitting here, but if you're going to do your research, who you're going to have it done, because I can tell you there's a lot of people that know how to do suspension, lots of people. And come race day or practice day, the bike's on the truck because something wasn't right or it just tossed somebody over the handlebars. So, whether it's Mitch or any other suspension people out there, know who they are, know what they do. And I do believe that it has to be almost a personal connection between who's doing your work, because you've got to be able to tell them what the bike is doing. I mean, I can send it to XYZ suspension somewhere, right? And send it down to Florida and say, I want my suspension done. But if you're not telling them this is what it's doing for me, or I'm getting this happen, or it's trying to swap ends, or I'm just it's knocking my teeth out of my head because I'm hitting this bump, or it's just so soft, it's great, but as soon as I get any kind of rollers, I'm all over the place. And you've got to be able to have somebody that can listen to you complain and whine about what the suspension's doing and be able to pick it out of what you're really doing. Sending it mail order doesn't really do you much. You want it so you can go off-road? Okay. And they do. And it's very important because, like I say, over the years, I've watched. I mean, back in the day, we'd take and unscrew the cap and cut a piece of PVC pipe, and we'd stick it in there and put it back down. Oh, that stiffened up the suspension, and was one side same as the other? Who knows? It just depended how it got crazy with my hacksaw and got my deal. And you could do that and make it work, you know, but it wasn't right.
You guys don't have that part of your program.
We actually
do that?
We do.
Is that?
No.
Is that like a bonus feature?
I've taken stuff apart that is cut at different levels and at different angles. So yes.
So I guess
we can fix that.
I guess where my point is, suspension work can be the best thing you'll ever do, but suspension work can be also the worst thing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, suspension is a situation. I can have my engine built by Tyler over there, and it can blow up tomorrow. Chances of killing me very minute compared to my suspension coming apart.
Right.
You know, and I mean, that's if you're jumping in the air or you're running down a trail at 12, 13 miles an hour in the middle of the desert somewhere, cooking along, and you smack a rock or something, that's gonna, it's gonna do some damage. So, like I said, just the best thing is to research. Go out there and look at it.
You have to be safe, and there's a trust between the rider and the bike. And the rider and the guy that does your suspension and motors.
And motors.
There's a certain trust there you have to have.
And definitely don't want to lock it up in the middle of the jump.
Right.
We pride ourselves in safety. Been doing this 12 years now. I can't say that I've ever had somebody seriously get hurt because of my stuff.
I don't know.
So
I rode too fast through that rock garden. I could have got hurt.
You twisted an ankle?
I could have got hurt.
But you didn't. That's the key word.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, it is amazing that all of a sudden you ride better and faster. You know, it's like, wow.
Well, it's more comfortable.
And
it's a like
when
you
you're
said,
not thinking about what you're going to do.
The safety part is probably the most important. I mean, especially out here at the state forest.
Yes.
Yeah.
How many people just go swapping through there and they're just out of control.
Yeah.
They don't have a clue what they're doing.
Go out and buy it, and 3 hours later, you're down here running it through the park.
Yeah.
You haven't even put air in their tires.
Right,
So,
exactly.
Well, that's our number one mission, is to make the bike ride to your preference to make it work how the way you want it to work and to keep you safe. You know,
Right.
That's what we do on a daily basis.
Well, how does one, for the audience that maybe would be interested, how does one find you guys? I mean, we talked about Waterville, Ohio, the location, but you have a web, I'm assuming a website, you got social media presence and stuff.
So right now we do have social media presence. It's Ryder Power Sports on Facebook. That's RYDR Power Sports. Turbo Speed Tuning on Facebook. And Fathom Ride Co., which is our clothing company. And we do have a website for that. It's www.fathmco.com.
What is that, gear, or is that?
It's actually a casual clothing company. Tyler's actually wearing one of our SpaceX tees here.
Okay.
Send it to the moon tee.
Gotcha.
But that's basically our online portal right now that we have. But yeah, we're on Facebook and Instagram right now. The website will be up soon, and the grand opening will have quite a bit of information out there soon for the grand opening.
Great.
In most local tracks, he's usually at most local tracks.
Try to be. Yep.
Ask for Mitch, and they'll point you to him because everybody knows Mitch. So.
We got to get you out at the. We're doing another hare scramble.
We'll be there
at Heinz Farm. So yeah, I got to get you out. You've ridden that a couple times,
I've
right?
done it twice. I love that event. It's great.
Yeah, we look forward to it. I think it's going to be.
I'm glad it's back.
Oh, we are too.
Yeah.
Ethan gets to ride, so he does get to come back. So
It's awesome. You gonna ride with him?
We're gonna ride the. He's gonna try to ride the little kids.
The morning class.
Morning deal.
Yeah.
Yep. So we're gonna practice on that, and we're gonna try to do with him. We're gonna try to do a little bit of sprint enduro or family enduro.
Good.
Yeah, to get him used to it. So
we got a couple new things with that. We got speaking of ATVs, we're going to do an ATV race on Saturday.
Oh, cool.
So we're going to try that. They were kind of, twisting our arms, and we said, okay, let's do it. I think we can manage it without messing up too much of the single track stuff. So we were out there a couple weeks ago. What was it, 2 weekends ago? Kind of laying out trail.
Well, you were here this last Sunday, right?
It was last Sunday.
Yeah, Easter Sunday. Was it Easter
Sunday?
Sunday?
No, it was a Sunday before that.
Oh, okay.
And so we're going to kind of actually wrap the race course back around like the bar and stuff.
Oh, really?
So
That's
yeah,
cool.
so like kind of utilize the pit bike challenge. So
Nice.
my main task and goal was to try to find a way to make it more spectator friendly, and I think it's going to be really cool.
Yeah.
It's gonna be
Swap meet.
awesome.
We're gonna have the swap meet again.
You're gonna have a swap meet again.
So you need to be at the
Yep.
swap meet. It could be good advertising.
Yeah,
for sure.
So there's a lot of moving pieces and parts with the whole thing,
Yeah.
but we're going to do that and then probably do a Saturday night pit bike challenge again.
Good.
There's
Be
a lot
good
of
time.
guys kind of enjoyed that.
We'll be
so.
there. We'll be there for it.
Yep.
So.
I'm going to take a vacation. I'm going to go away that weekend and
Well,
just let everybody else try
me
to
too.
run it.
Not a bad
Well,
idea.
it's funny. I do want to make thank Mitch too, because Mitch has not only been our suspension guy, but when we started MX Express, actually before that, when we built a little track out back in the back 40, Mitch is one out to come out with a dozer and dozed all it and put our rollers in and did all that kind of stuff. So he's a track builder too.
We use that word, that term
Well,
loosely.
he,
That's loose.
He came out and helped us start MX Express when we were out there. So he was out there and spent a lot of time getting things, find out what would be work good and what would be good for safe for everybody out there. So we want to thank him for that too.
My mission from day one has been to grow this sport in the Toledo community.
And I think it has.
and
I think,
that's-
like you said, I think it's taken some time.
I don't
but
care if it's building a track, building a motor, suspension, club stuff with Toledo
Right.
Trail Riders. I don't care what it is. My goal is to get more riders out there, and I think we're getting
We are.
very, very close to what my vision was 10 years ago. I'm sure you're seeing it too, man.
Yep. Yeah.
So-
Our club numbers are growing and
Yep.
a lot of enthusiasm.
Right.
You got, the Delta Renaissance going on.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
so I think there's a lot of good in this area.
Yeah.
There really is.
It's a
The
good
more
community right now.
we can get, the better.
Yeah.
That's really, unfortunately, it's sort of out of sight, out of mind. And people just sort of, forget about stuff, but there's
Right.
nothing going on. So the more we can get happening, the more events that can happen, and I said, I think, if only one thing come out of good of the virus is that I do believe the family has come a little bit closer together after spending 6 months, 8 months,
Yep.
right together, not going or doing anything, which is good. I mean, it's good to reset. And I think, it's really helped the family look at things to do, to go out there, whether it's racing or riding, or riding the woods or whatever it is. So I think, if anything good at all can be said of that, I think that's what's happened, which has really helped the motorsports a lot, because now the families can all do everything together and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think we're on the the precipice of greatness,
We
as time goes on. I absolutely believe that. So, well, gentlemen, we appreciate you guys coming on.
Thanks
very
for having
much.
us.
And this episode is brought to you by Ryder Power Sports, located in Waterville, Ohio.
Ryder Power Sports provides a host of services for your motocross and off-road machine. Ryder Power Sports is the home to the ever-famous turbo speed tuning, and now Fathom Ride Company.
Give Ryder Power Sports a call at 419-601-0421 and keep an eye out for their spring grand opening. As we wrap up, Marty and I want to thank you for tuning into Season 2, Episode 8. Once again, I want to thank our guests, Mitch Gerwin and Tyler Pahl, for joining us. If you have questions, comments, ideas, or guests you want to hear from, we want to hear from you. So send us an email to ToledoTrackandTrail@gmail.com. Until next time, we hope you and your family can get outside and enjoy the sport of motocross and off-road racing and riding. Stay on the track and trail wherever you are and be good stewards of the sport that you love so much. On behalf of my co-host, Marty Wheeler, I'm Matt Bucher. We want to again thank you for tuning in to the Toledo Track and Trail podcast. Stay safe, everyone.